Inflation slowed, but the power bill did not. That is the contradiction sitting inside millions of American homes. The headline numbers look better than they did in 2022. The worst inflation shock has cooled. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer prices rose 9.1% over the year ending in June 2022. The largest increase in roughly 4 decades. By April 2026, the picture looked very different. Overall, consumer prices were up 3.8% from a year earlier, but electricity prices were up 6.1%. So while the national inflation story became less severe, one of the most unavoidable household bills kept rising faster. Electricity is not a luxury purchase. A family can delay a new appliance. A retiree can cut back on restaurant meals. A small business can postpone an upgrade. But people still need heat, air conditioning, refrigeration, lighting, laundry, phone chargers, internet routers, and basic medical equipment. The power bill arrives whether the inflation headline looks better or not. That is why electricity has become one of the clearest examples of the gap between the economy Americans hear about and the economy they pay for. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, retail electricity prices have risen faster than inflation since 2022. The agency also expects residential electricity prices to keep rising in 2026 and 2027. That does not mean the inflation data is wrong. It means the pressure is uneven. Some prices cool, some rise more slowly. Others keep climbing because they are tied to systems that take years to build, finance, repair, and regulate. Electricity is one of those systems. A power bill is shaped by more than the electricity used in a single month. It reflects fuel costs, aging infrastructure, storm repairs, transmission lines, local distribution systems, financing costs, utility rate cases, peak demand, and the cost of keeping the grid reliable. That makes it different from many everyday prices. When some consumer goods get cheaper, shoppers may eventually see relief on the shelf. But utility bills move through a slower structure. A household may be paying for last month's usage, but also for the long-term system that delivers power every hour of the day. And that system is under strain. In March 2026, the EIA's Electric Power Monthly showed that average U.S. electricity revenue per kilowatt-hour rose 7.2% from a year earlier. For residential customers, it rose 10.2%. That is where a national data point becomes a household problem. For families, it is a larger monthly balance. For workers, it is another cost competing with wages. For retirees, it is another fixed expense inside a fixed income. For small businesses, it is one more pressure on operating margins. The deeper pressure is demand. For years, U.S. electricity demand grew slowly. Now the picture is changing. Homes use more devices. Businesses depend on uninterrupted power. Hotter or colder periods can push heating and cooling demand higher. And large new electricity users are entering the system. Data centers are one of them. The Department of Energy and Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory reported that data centers used about 4.4% of U.S. electricity in 2023. By 2028, that share could rise to between 6.7% and 12%. That does not mean data centers are the reason every household bill increased. They are not. But they are part of a larger demand story. A grid built around one era is being asked to serve another. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation has warned that projected resource and transmission growth is not keeping pace with some new large loads, including data centers. Put simply, more electricity is being requested from a system that also needs more capacity, more transmission, and more investment. That investment has to be paid for. If utilities spend too little, reliability can suffer. If they spend more, those costs can move into customer rates. If demand grows faster than supply, pressure builds. If transmission projects lag, power cannot always move easily from where it is generated to where it is needed. If storms damage local systems, repairs still have to be funded. There is no painless version of that equation. This is why power bills can keep rising even after broader inflation slows. Electricity is not just a monthly product. It is an infrastructure cost spread across households and businesses. And the burden is not shared evenly. Retirees on fixed incomes may have little room to absorb another increase. Renters may not control insulation, windows, appliances, or heating and cooling systems. Lower-income families may live in older homes that use more energy. Small businesses with refrigeration, lighting, or heavy air conditioning needs may see higher electric bills cut directly into margins. For the middle class, this kind of pressure rarely arrives as one dramatic event. It arrives as a stack of ordinary bills: housing, insurance, groceries, debt payments, medical costs, utilities. Each one has its own explanation. Together, they create the feeling that the budget never quite catches up. The National Energy Assistance Directors Association estimated that outstanding utility debt rose from $17.5 billion in January 2023 to $21 billion in June 2025. That number shows the strain behind the monthly bill. Some households are not simply frustrated by higher electricity costs. They are falling behind on a basic service. That is the part of inflation that can disappear inside the headline number. A lower CPI reading can be accurate and still fail to describe what families feel when the most unavoidable bills keep rising. Electricity sits directly in that gap. It is essential. It is local. It is regulated. It depends on physical infrastructure. And its costs can move through the system slowly, long after the national inflation peak has passed. So the story is not as simple as blaming one company, one technology, one fuel, or one policy. The verified data points to a more complicated pressure. Data centers are adding demand. Grid infrastructure needs investment. Utilities are recovering costs. Reliability planning is becoming more important. Weather can damage systems and increase peak usage. Regional markets differ. State regulation differs. Local utility needs differ. But the customer sees one number: the bill. And when that bill rises faster than the broader inflation rate, the economy feels more expensive than the headline suggests. Looking ahead, the most realistic outlook is continued pressure, not sudden collapse and not sudden relief. The EIA expects residential electricity prices to rise in 2026, with further increases projected in 2027. That does not mean every state, every utility, or every household will see the same increase. Electricity prices vary widely across the country, but the direction matters. Electricity is likely to remain one of the costs holding pressure on household budgets, even as the broader inflation story looks less severe than it did in 2022. For American families, the lesson is straightforward. Inflation does not arrive evenly, and it does not leave evenly. The national number can cool while the most unavoidable bills keep rising. That is what makes the power bill so important. It is not just a utility charge. It is a monthly reminder that the cost of living is shaped by systems most people never see. Power plants, substations, transmission lines, regulators, financing costs, storm repairs, and new demand from a changing economy. The inflation shock may have eased, but the grid still has to be maintained. It still has to expand. it still has to be paid for. And more often now, that cost is showing up at home.